I guess the purpose of this more than anything else is we're going to be changing the name of Lake Ontario, effective immediately, to Lake America. That's going to take place right now as I sign the order. You have anything to say about it, Brett?
Yes, sir. So this is a straightforward but important executive order. It directs Secretary Burgum and the Department of the Interior to update the Geographic Names Information Service to reflect that the lake once known as Lake Ontario will, from this day forward, be known as Lake America. This is a lake that has most of its volume in the United States. The deepest parts of the lake sit in United States territory. So this will reflect that this is an American lake.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, it's easy to laugh about all that. It's easy to find it humorous, but it's ridiculous. And it's serious. I know you guys have seen that already, and you're sick of seeing Donald Trump and his ridiculous stunts. But ridiculous stunts have impact. Ridiculous stunts matter. And we'd be able to laugh off Donald Trump's ridiculous stunts if the fact was they weren't actually being implemented and causing harm to average Americans and average people across the country, causing damage to our economy, causing grief for a lot of people, to include me in my home state here and my guest in his home state. Because it's not a joke. These are not silly things. These are real things that are harming people, and they're harming our trade. But the problem in the end, too, is, and why we're coming off the midterms, is as we approach the midterms, the people who should be providing a co-equal branch of government and putting a check on the part of the executive have forsaken that rule, have forsaken that duty. Here's a perfect example of the response by a true acolyte himself in the Republican doormat Congress.
This because obviously the president this is negotiating style. This is also him just telling the Canadians that, look, enough is enough. They've taken advantage of us for too long. That free trade was not fair trade, according to the administration. Your thoughts?
Well, I think they're separate issues in some ways, but also related. President Trump is very good at leverage. He wants to do things to irritate people who he's negotiating with so he can get a better deal. You saw he's changed the Gulf of America name already. So we've had this precedent. But ultimately, we do need to have fair trade.
You see how he just kind of breezed through it. Oh, we already did the Gulf of America, so there's precedent for his stupid tricks that don't matter to the world. Lake Ontario was named before either of us had our countries. Matter of fact, Lake Ontario was named before anybody on this show, even looking like this, showed up here to look at it. It was named by the natives. But that's the stupidity. Doug Ford, the governor of that province of Ontario, offended Trump. So Trump had to go off and name the lake different. It's ridiculous. And this is not a negotiating style. I don't care what McCormick says. This is not how you negotiate, okay? That's not how it works. I don't know where he learned to negotiate. If it was the Marine Corps, that's pretty sad. You don't negotiate by mocking and belittling and threatening people who are actually our friends. And that's where this comes in. Justin Wolfers has a perspective on it.
To the Canadians, this is not a trade war. Look, the trade war is tariffs. Friends can figure stuff like that out. The real turning point in this relationship came when Trump started joking about making Canada the 51st state, made it clear that he didn't care about their consent, and actually said that he would use the United States' economic power to force it into submission. Look, I don't know what was in the president's heart at the time. Presumably this is some sort of a joke, but it turns out that when you tell another country you want to take over, whether they like it or not, they just don't take it well. And that, I think, so for the Canadians, this is an existential threat.
Yes.
For the United States, this is a trade war.
Right.
And you need to, that fundamentally changes everything. And I just want to point one more thing out. This was so dumb. Your job as a politician is to make it easy for the other side to say yes.
Yeah.
The president's online trolling has made it impossible for the Canadians to say yes.
That's it. So we're over here laughing it off. It's no big whoop. We're laughing off the trade war as no big deal, though it's very big deal, economically especially. And the Republicans in Congress are simply ignoring it. They've forsaken their duties to actually provide oversight, their constitutional duty. But for our Canadian friends, it's a real thing. The president of a powerful nation saying he wants to take over is not a joke. And it leaves all of us hurt. So 68 days from the midterms, what are we going to do about this? Well, that's the question, isn't it? And how's it going to look? And what's shaping the conversation? And are people listening? Well, there's no better place to look than Pennsylvania, right? It's right in the middle of all this. So many of these issues fall straight into Pennsylvania's lap. So I'm glad to have a great guest who knows what's going on and to talk about the larger issues based on his experience, not just as a member of Congress, but as a Marine Corps member as well. So let's get on the show. I am Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy with FP Wellman, right here at My Stash Network. Now, look, I can tell you guys a secret. Satchel the intern is on his way to college, so I'm going solo. So this could be a mess. Bear with me. We're going to have a good time nonetheless, because even I can figure it out. Maybe we'll see. But either way, thanks for joining us live here on a Friday night on the Midas Touch Network every week. Make sure you like, share, and share. Let's get on with the show. I'm Fred Wellman. I actually took a break and put vodka in here because that's how it's going to go. A little secret, we already had to hit rewind one time because I screwed up the mic. Anyway, it's great to be with you guys here on a Friday night. I am not drinking vodka, I'm drinking water. I've got a great guest. Joining me this week is Conor Lamb, former constable for Pennsylvania, former fellow prosecutor. He represented a competitive district of Western Pennsylvania. He spent the last several years really deeply thinking about what Democrats need to do to win voters in places where the party is struggling. He's got a great perspective because he's right in the great state of Pennsylvania. Let's not waste any more of his time. Let's get him on the show. Representative Lamb, it's great to have you back on the show. I hope you hear me loud and clear.
I hear you great. You didn't tell me about the vodka ahead of time, or I would have been prepared.
We should have poured cocktails. It's close enough to happy hour. We're good. Well, it's great to have you, sir. Man, I don't know. I mean, Pennsylvania is going to be affected by this trade war I opened the show with, right? I mean, you guys are bordering. Tell me, what are your thoughts on this ridiculousness, and then the congressional response to it?
Well, it just serves no purpose. First of all, on like why Trump is doing it. It really can only hurt us. And that's in so many different ways, farms, dairies. I can't tell you how many farmers I've talked to where like their biggest issue is market access. They want to sell into Canada very badly. So it's going to hurt us a lot there. And it's just one of the reasons that Congress is the least trusted and most disrespected institution in American life is exactly what you just showed. They just won't say what everyone can see is true, that this is not just a negotiating tactic. This is an old man who is flailing and doesn't know how to do anything else. And the role of Congress is to at least say that and push back against it. And these guys have totally given that up.
Yeah, it's apparent. And it's shocking to me just how much they've given up, and they refuse to see the impact of this. I mean, I know you're probably talking to working folks. I stopped saying working class because when you've got numbers like 67% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. If you're not a stock owner or an asset owner, like the top 20%, if you're earning a paycheck right now, you're hurting, and they're not getting a relief, are they?
No, not at all. I mean, things are getting worse every time he does something new with Iran or this thing with Canada. I mean, you could have a whole separate discussion about the national debt crossing 40 trillion and what that's doing to the bond market, because that's increasing interest rates and for mortgages, like a young person trying to buy a house. I mean, so many ways people are being hammered, and he's just flagrantly like enjoying the process of making it worse. It seems like he's not even trying to make it better.
Yeah, there's no effort whatsoever. And Pennsylvania, circling back to your state where you're sitting, you really could decide to control the House. There's so many key races right there in the state going back and forth. Why do you think your state is so important in this whole conversation right now?
Well, I just think we sit at the crossroads of a lot of the currents that are affecting American politics. We have a lot of voters in that kind of white working class group that was so essential to Trump's rise, and he has won Pennsylvania in 2 out of his 3 presidential elections. But they're clearly turning on him over the economy. We, have a small but potent Latino population that, again, is a group that sort of went away to him in 24. But some of these economic issues, small business issues, are definitely bringing us back their way. And then we just happen to have this particular history where our state Supreme Court has intervened to draw the congressional districts, and they kind of drew a map that was essentially 50-50 between the two parties. And so that gives us a lot of seats that are at play every time.
And they're right at the center of these things. We mentioned the trade war. We mentioned just measles death. I mean, you guys just had 2 measles deaths, and Governor Shapiro's weighing in on that as your own government fights back on that, isn't it? I mean, it's a shocking turn of events so quickly, isn't it?
It really is. The epicenter of the measles outbreak in Pennsylvania is kind of where the Amish community is the most heavily concentrated, Amish and Mennonite. And a lot of the people who've been infected are children. A lot of children are being hospitalized. It's really a very dangerous situation. And if you know about vaccination, obviously, for a situation to be safe, you don't have to have 100% of people vaccinated, but it has to be pretty high to get to herd immunity. And this place has fallen below it since COVID as more people question it. So that's why the connection to RFK Jr. is so important, is he's one of the leading figures who have made people make this choice not to vaccinate their children just in the last 5 years. And we're seeing one of the effects here.
Yeah, and that leads us right at that conversation. I mean, you've spent a lot of time talking to, voters in the place, and in your daily work, you're still in the law, you're still practicing law. What are you hearing from folks? I mean, what is Washington D.C. not hearing from working people?
I mean, the way that, quote unquote, affordability just covers everything, breaks through every issue. It just surfaces in every conversation of every kind. We always talk as politicians about the economy being important, but as you know, in different election cycles, abortion or immigration
Right.
or other issues that kind of rise to the top, and that stuff's gone. Like, it's like people are so frustrated by their inability to afford the basics of life, and this attitude that Trump conveys, like he doesn't even care or it's not even a problem. And so whether that results in like more Democratic votes or a lot of people just not voting, I don't know, but it's really fatal to him either way.
Are you seeing Republican candidates get that, or are they so tied to the Trump, the Trump administration and the denial that, do you think they get it?
I don't know if they get it. They're not acting like they get it, because what you would
Right.
do if you got it would be maybe a version of what sometimes you see Susan Collins do, which is the slightest, challenge to Trump or ability. Yeah, they don't even do that, most of them, though. I mean, the guys in the House, I think, are newer and they are powerless. So they sort of revert to like socialism, communism, and the argument
Yeah.
that like prices will get even worse if communists are in charge, because they can't bring themselves to criticize Trump. And that's just implausible in a year like this. So
Right. And that really is the crux of it, isn't it? I mean, that is the key. Are you seeing the Democrat? Let's flip the other side. Do you see our candidates, the Democrats who are running your state, are they getting it right? Are you frustrated that maybe obviously you've got to deal with betterments? That's a whole different issue. But as you're looking,
if we're calling him a Democrat still.
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know. I think I saw a video today where he was debating. I don't even. That's a whole separate topic we could talk about. That is a weird.
No, as far as our
cult.
candidates, though, it's interesting. Pennsylvania has just done really well this year in
Yeah.
nominated. And,
Impression.
behind that, I think there's some leadership from Governor Shapiro that went into that in terms of,
Yeah.
Influencing who was going to run in these races. But also a lot of it is just self-selecting. Like, a lot of what I do is not even so much in the congressional races, because those are so well funded and well run.
Yeah.
I'm helping all these people, like ordinary people that never ran for anything, who have stepped up to run in like a state house district.
Yeah.
And even those are fantastic, because I do think as Americans, you see this in the military, like at times of crisis, ordinary people kind of change their life and step up to do something. And that's happening a lot. So we have a good situation here in Pennsylvania in terms of who's running.
Yeah, and it feels like there's a collective action up and down the ticket. I mean, and you're in the same situation I am, where you don't have any. Well, you have a Senate race this year, do you?
No, we don't. We have the governor's
Yeah,
race.
so you're-
Shapiro's going to dominate, and there has to be some tailwinds from that. So
Right, and then all the way down to the bottom of the ticket, and that's the key. I was with an organization that found there was a study that showed that when there's a good, solid ticket, a Democrat in the ticket at every level, it raises the vote up 2.5% up the ticket. So we'll see turnout on the right side for that reason. I think you've won in races in Trump country. That was what brought you into Congress in a tough time. Can I ask? I mean, we've said good things. We say Democrats are getting things right. Do you think we're getting right and also wrong as we run those kind of places? Is that message really breaking through to the folks who need to hear it, or is it being ignored?
like everything, it's a mixed bag. And I think what you're continuing to see is that there are individual candidates that can overcome the baggage that the Democratic Party brand still presents in some of these places. And so, we saw that in 24 as well, where there were these different Senate candidates, like Alyssa Slotkin being a really good example, who overran, the headwinds that put Trump over Kamala. Same state, same ballot, she gets elected. And, I think we're hoping to see that this cycle with an Ossoff, maybe a Tallarico, whoever you want to name. And we're seeing that on the local level here as well. But it is, I've always been frustrated by the situation that in a lot of these places, you have to be comfortable kind of distancing yourself from the party brand a little bit. You always wish that the party could help close that gap for you. But in reality, there is no party that can do that. It's a lot of individual candidates who have to figure out how to work together.
And that's what I say a lot. I've got a lot of friends from across the country who will message me and say, "Oh, Hakeem Jeffries this, or Chuck Schumer that, or the DSA this, the other." But in a lot of ways, you've learned that in a lot of a congressional race, especially a House race, is an individual race. Like, people aren't necessarily voting because maybe Hakeem Jeffries will be the speaker or not be the speaker, right? In the end, it does come down to the issues. I mean, it's like a hyper. It's in a lot of ways, well, a national race, a local race too, right? And they have to get that right. The national framework doesn't actually matter as much, does it? It does have to be done right at the state level, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that people use sort of national type issues to take the measure of the candidate locally in a way. So, like, one example from my first race, which was the one where Trump had just won it by 20 points and a
Yeah.
Democrat hadn't even run in the cycle before, and I'm a first time candidate with very little expertise on my side. And the first question all these reporters kept asking me was, "Are you going to vote for Nancy Pelosi for speaker?" Because back then, people were rumbling about challenging her. It was
Yeah.
before she kind of got this legendary status in Trump's. She was still kind of in question territory. And, being a Marine and all this stuff, I was just like, you know what? No, I'm not. Like, I think we need new leadership. And the Marines, they change out their leaders every couple of years. She's been there forever. And so, I never said I didn't like her. In fact, I grew to like her and respect her very much. But I just kind of took that position. Like, I get it that that's against my party, but I think we should have younger, newer people taking over. And I think a lot of people in that district who didn't previously care that much one way or the other about Pelosi, that became a very favorable issue for them because it just showed a little bit of independence. But now that I have some years behind me and see like that, I probably could have done that 5 different ways. Like, there are different
Right.
issues you could have used to do something like that. And I think that's what good candidates do, is they find one that's natural to them. That was natural to me at the time, so I did it. But
Yeah, and it does seem a year for genuineness. It seems like people really want to see some authentic candidates. I think that's the thread I pull a lot. And they also want to see people who are willing to break things. So let's take a break. I want to come back to the discussion of, so what do we do if we win this thing? And we'll come right back to our sponsor break and talk about that, because it's not enough to say we're going to do things. We also, or be against something, right? We have to be for something. And I'd love to talk to you about that, your perspective on that. So we'll be right back after our sponsor. I don't do sponsor reads for things I don't believe in. I've turned plenty down. So before I put my name next to chapter, I did my homework and asked them the questions that you'd want asked. And here's what I found. Medicare is a maze, and most of the help out there isn't really help. Too many agents are paid to steer you towards certain plans, whether they fit you or not. Chapter is different. They're honest. They're the only Medicare advisor that compares every plan in the country, and they're not paid to push one plan over another. If you're already the right plan for your needs, they'll tell you that and let you get on with your day. Their advice is completely free, and they can walk through your options in under 20 minutes. Doing this, they've saved people an average of $1,100 a year. If you're on Medicare or you've got questions about it, call my friends at Chapter at 937-507-8644. You'll get a straight answer, and that's rare these days. That's 937-507-8644 to talk to Chapter. Thanks. And we're back. So on that note, as I left with the sponsor, we talked a little bit about what we're against, and we could talk a lot about the rule of law. You're obviously a former federal prosecutor. I want to talk about that as a former Marine as well. But what's your advice to candidates and at the state house level too? Is I say a lot, it's not enough to be against something, right? We have to be for something. Are you seeing? What do the Democrats need to do if they do get the majority? What are people going to be hungry for as soon as they get there?
well, I think we also shouldn't overpromise. So for the next 2 years, if the Democrats are in a House majority only, their job is mostly going to be accountability, and that's an important
Right.
public purpose. Like, we also shouldn't demean that by saying we can't just be against things. Like, well,
Yeah.
in the accountability world, kind of like the world of a prosecutor, you're supposed to be against crime and against corruption and misconduct and price gouging and things like that. So I think for 2 years, that will be an important focus.
Yeah.
You can always be laying the groundwork for a more affirmative agenda. But I'll be honest, like, when we try to do that stuff between 2018 and 2020, I don't think anyone paid attention to all the message bills that we passed to say what we were for. I
Yeah.
think it was mostly about, the impeachment and what function that had. Here, if anyone was asking my advice, I would say, see if you can widen the lens from Trump a little bit, because I think the corruption that really drives people crazy is not just what Trump is personally getting away with, but this idea that he's colluding with all these really powerful corporate oligarch type figures. And then that's resulting in higher prices and all these kind of unfair and harmful tech practices, flock cameras, data centers, and whatever. And there's a corruption story there in all of it that I think Democrats can meaningfully contribute to.
Yeah, that fight that we've seen that here when we talk to folks. They want to see if somebody's going to fight the billionaires, fight the corporations, multi-billion-dollar corporations. Wherever where you fall on data centers, the idea that a multi-billion-dollar corporation can just show up in a rural space and dominate that and dictate the terms with no help from higher, no help from government is frustrating to people a lot, isn't it? It's like they just feel like they're being attacked and there's no one helping them, is there?
That's right. And I also think, on these different issues of prices, which is people just keep telling us over and over again how much prices are affecting them. There's there's an important amount of work to be done on, the price of a barrel of oil is not always so high that the price at your pump has to be 450 or whatever it is today. And
Right.
these oil companies were some of Trump's biggest donors. And like, you get this feeling like they're getting away with things, with his kind of wink, wink. And that's probably happening in food as well. And I think
Yeah.
Democrats can do some things on those issues to show the American people what's really going on.
And unpack that and have that accountability. We used to talk a lot about affordability, accountability, and the healthcare issues, and those are driving so many of our daily lives. We have to paint that picture, right? That this corruption is truly affecting our daily lives. I think I saw a story today where they're trying to talk the National Park Service into selling off part of Yellowstone to one of Trump's donors
Yeah, I saw that.
so he could build a road. I mean, it is truly affecting us. The transfer of money from the Park Service to Trump's White House, upgrades and gilding is also going to affect average Americans. I think when they could see it in their own pocketbook and their own lives, it matters more, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's always tempting to, in a way, if you're just reacting to Trump, you're letting him set the agenda. But if Democrats are able to keep bringing it back to this core issue of prices, like that's why he's naming the Lake Ontario, because he realizes moments when he's in trouble and he just tries to think of something ridiculous to do.
Yeah.
Our challenge is always like to redirect it onto the ground of our own choosing.
So all this is under the framework for all of this is the rule of law, right? It is our rights. It's Congress's duty to the Constitution. All these things, the insider trade. It's almost everything goes back to the state of the rule of law. As a former federal prosecutor and as a former member of Congress, what do you see right now? I mean, are you horrified? Are you how concerned? What level of concern do you have about the state of the rule of law in our country as a whole?
It's interesting. I have concerns, and then I also think there are hopeful things I see in my day-to-day job too that maybe not everyone sees. But in my day-to-day job now, I'm a former criminal prosecutor. I'm a civil practitioner now on the plaintiff side, and this group of trial lawyers that we have in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Association for Justice, we advocate for people just to be able to get access to the courts and be able to take on big corporations on a number of issues, or healthcare entities or whoever. And one of the things we're noticing kind of collectively as plaintiffs lawyers is a slight shift in juries in our favor because they become so skeptical of these, sort of big corporate institutional players and the way they treat people. So one of the things that suggests is people are hungry to see the powerful held accountable to the same standard as everyone else, which is kind of definitional to the rule of law. And that's the very thing that Trump and Stephen Miller and JD Vance are trying to attack. And they're trying to convince, much like Putin has done in Russia, they're trying to convince people that is not real, that power, as Stephen Miller said, power determines everything. It's not one standard for everyone. But what I see and what I think my colleagues in the Pennsylvania Association for Justice are seeing is that at the level of like individual people that are serving on juries, is they're very hungry to see one side to everybody.
That's fascinating, and it pays off because we do see those kind of juries working. The civil courts are working. The power of those courts is working. There's been a check. There's been a frustration. But as you go through the court system and all your experience, what do you see about the Supreme Court? I mean, as you watch the things unfold with Supreme Court decisions, now accusations of like, tell me, I think trying to disbar Roberts himself. I mean, does it undermine your faith in the whole system at this point?
It doesn't undermine my faith in the system, especially because so much of the system is like what I'm talking about in state courts with local juries that really it feels very far from anything the Supreme Court.
Right.
But I do think that, like, I've talked to some of the people that taught constitutional law at my law school and still teach it. And they've had to really change what they teach because it's not really the way I was taught is there's kind of this continuous thread of thought through all constitutional law. And even though you end up with a Scalia or an Earl Warren, and they have different maybe outcomes, they're doing things similarly and they're paying homage to the same things. And now, a lot of these professors are teaching there's kind of a break in time around
Yeah.
and they're very results oriented and they're helping Trump. And that is bad if it percolates through the system, that the act of judging is no longer this less partisan thing. And, a lot of proposals are out there, but we obviously need to do something to confront this institution with the Supreme Court for just how much power they've given away to the president.
Right. And how much of a priority should that be for the next Congress? If we do, let's say we get both the House and the Senate, do you think that's something they should consider, or are there more pressing issues? I mean, I hear a lot, and I think you and I think if we circled a lot of this of the conversation, it goes to faith in government, right? Faith in the actual government, not just the partisans, the party parts, the party, but the actual system of government. I've heard so many people say to me, they don't have faith in anybody anymore. I mean, do you think that's going to be a priority? It should be a priority, right? Is it restoring faith that the rules exist and are being followed by somebody, right? Because it does feel like more and more there just isn't any rules. Stock trading and Supreme Court justices going with billionaires. I mean, is a total undermining of faith in government going to really undermine everything we're trying to do as both Democrats and Republicans for that matter?
Well, it certainly makes everything we're trying to do a lot harder, and it's just a reality of our society now that we have to accept, and it applies to both parties. My hypothesis here, which maybe some Democrats wouldn't want to hear, is that rushing to take on an issue like the Supreme Court in the years between 2026 and 2028 would come across to people as like not their top priority compared to being able to afford basic life, but B, you're dangerously close at that point to people perceiving that as, well, now you're just trying to shift the rules in your own favor. You're not trying to go neutral ground. And so I think it may take some time for the public to get used to the idea that something about the Supreme Court needs to change. So I would say it's an important issue, maybe not the first thing the new Congress takes on. And maybe we could keep it in our mind that we might have to let that issue breathe for a while and different options present themselves before you take it all the way.
Yeah, you've seen so many. I've seen some extensive like anti-corruption agendas that do include that. And you're right. It's something I talk about a lot. We call it day one Democrat, right? It's like, here's things got to get done at day one. And as a Marine, I think you'll appreciate. We talk a lot about, when you come up on a service member, a soldier or a Marine who's been injured, he's bleeding out. You don't say, "Don't worry, it's gonna be fine. You get the land stool," right? We'll evacuate you. No, you treat the wounds, right? It's funny how often I hear, "Well, that's just a Band-Aid." Yeah, well, we need Band-Aids, right? There's day one things that need to get done. I mean, what are the day one things you want to see get done? No matter, let's say we take the House and the Senate. What kind of day one things would you think should be a priority for people to get their chance to go up there?
Well, I think the biggest focus of a new Congress, as long as Trump is president, is going to be corruption. I mean, it has just gotten to such an unbelievable level that I don't think most people would have imagined ever getting to. But there's these, and you forget about some of them now. But the gift of the plane, the one that really has just always bothered me is how he sold half his crypto company to the spy sheik from the Middle East, who literally runs their national security intelligence service. Like literally, you're profiting directly and personally from someone whose interests are with another country. I think a lot of these issues around Israel and Gaza and all those things are perceived by people through a lens of corruption because they can't identify an actual national purpose of ours in the Iran war. And so I think if Democrats could kind of methodically work through these separate issues through the lens of trying to uncover what's really happening and tell the public about it, we'd be doing a service in a time when we know Trump is really not going to be like signing new legislation, right? So at least we could be laying the groundwork for what's true. And, we could be pinning him to the wall on some of these issues, particularly as it relates to gas prices. So,
yeah, quickly too, because it is. And the insider trading is what shocked me, especially and I'm sure you as a veteran, is, the manipulation of the Iran war for the purpose of obviously manipulation for stock prices, trading with that. Actually, we just came out yesterday, traded Exxon the same day decisions from, there's somebody somebody traded $100 million in oil futures 15 minutes before one of the announcements, in the early part of the war. Someone is getting rich off our service members being in combat right now. At the same time, and that's corruption of a scale. It's almost, it hurts your head to think about that kind of a scale of corruption that is truly going to get people killed, isn't it? I mean, that's where we're at, aren't we?
No, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. And I really don't know why he ultimately decided to do the Iran thing, if it was just impulsive or what. But the problem with this level of corruption is it just has a way of clouding our perception of every issue. And so now it's hard to imagine or even a reason that we're in this war other than that. And I think, I follow kind of what's going on with the troops closely as you do. I think they feel that way. And I think the morale problems you read about on things like the Lincoln reflect this idea that they don't know what they're doing there. And a lot of them feel like it's a corrupt purpose. And we just have to find some way to try to reset that balance.
Yeah, I agree. I would be remiss if we didn't talk about your current work. The Pennsylvania Association for Justice. What is that all about? What are you doing? You mentioned it briefly earlier on. I wanted to circle back that before I let you go. What is your mission and what do you guys work on?
Right. Well, I'm a trial lawyer for a firm called Client Inspector. And because people on the plaintiff side, we represent victims of serious accidents, medical malpractice, college hazing, all sorts of, we're getting into sort of the social media litigation stuff. Obviously, we're sort of always outmatched by enormous corporations and their large corporate law firms that represent them.
Yeah.
And so on the plaintiff side, we tend to band together a little bit in groups like this Pennsylvania Association for Justice. And we're a resource for people who want to be plaintiffs' lawyers. We also lobby for a lot of legislation that can help people get access to the courts or try to rebalance. Just think about, for example, how many times when you buy something, you sign away a lot of your rights to like a trial, if anything ever. You sign away to arbitrate, if you have a dispute with Ticketmaster or whoever else. We're active on a lot of issues like that, and we support people like Governor Shapiro. And here in Pennsylvania, we have elected judges. We support judges that are, kind of friendly to ordinary people. So it's just about being an advocate for people and their needs. And, it's like I said, it's one of those things that encourages me because you get to see that there's a lot of people out there on our side. If you're not necessarily talking about a partisan issue, but an issue of right and wrong, an issue of justice, a lot of people see it the way we do. And that's encouraging.
Yep. And that's what it comes down to. And I think people are hungry for it right now. They're hungry for justice. I think a lot of people feel that they don't have the power anymore. And it does feel like that what you guys are doing, when I heard from your colleagues about it, it is about bringing people together and creating a collective strength, right? It's more than just me when you have a group like yours fighting and bringing multiple people together to fight, especially when we're talking about, like you said, billion-dollar corporations, right? So, and also, well, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy. Joking aside, we did do a reset of the show, so Conor has spent more than enough time, 2 shows worth of hanging out with me. Where can they find you personally right now, sir?
I do a lot of work on Substack. So if you just go on Substack and you search for my name, Conor Lamb, NPA, I'm on there. Some of the other platforms as well, but that's where I try to put most of my stuff into the world, is on Substack.
A good place for it. So I appreciate your time and keep up the fight for all of us, and I look forward to hearing from you next.
All right. Great work. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, sir. Cheers. I love catching with Conor. So, hey, thanks for bearing with me as I solo. As you see, my eyes doing this a lot. I'm looking at the screen, putting banners up myself. But as always, it's so good to spend time with you guys on a Friday night. I really do appreciate it. Look, we've got a real chance here, folks. You heard the number, 68 days. 68 days to the midterm. I know you're sick of hearing it every week. This is your chance to get involved. We have every characteristic. As I call people my other job all over the country, I keep hearing from them saying, hey, I'm giving in my state. There's so many competitive races. And so a lot of the people who normally rely on like national help and others, they may not get it. There's just so many races. So there's never been a time I've ever seen in my political activity where local candidates at the state house level or the Congress level or even Senate could use your help more than ever, because more than ever, there's just not too much to defend at once. We're in a situation where it's all hands on deck. So you guys have some very powerful hands. I'd love to see you get involved. Help your local candidates. If you got a favorite candidate nationally, you can send them some money. I know they'd appreciate that too. But most importantly, if you can help your local candidate just stand on the side of the road and wave signs, that's a win in their book. So whatever you can do to help. In the meantime, thanks for being with us here every Friday night. Check out our sponsors. In the meantime, I'm Fred Wellman. Join us on our Substack. That's at fpwellman.substack.com. That's where you can find out about all the work we're doing every time. There's a lot to keep up with these days. I know. I would love it. It's free to join, free to subscribe. But if you pay as a paid member, goes helps us keep this work going. In the meantime, thanks for joining us. I'm Fred Wellman. I will see you right here next Friday night, right on the Midas Touch Network.